Hey everybody, we're here to talk about the campaign today, and just a disclaimer, this is not an exhaustive how to play video of the campaign. The campaign is massive. It has thousands of or hundreds of storylines, thousands of different outcomes that we're not going to be able to go over every time. But watching this video, I think, will explain some of the major rules and some of the major clarifications. We would really recommend you to go through the rule book on this. And in addition to that, if you have any questions, you can always post it on our Facebook group or email us, and we're more than willing to answer. All right, so today I want to be talking about chapter 2 of the campaign because it's the bulk of how you learn how to play this campaign. There's another video we posted about the general, overall kind of setup of the campaign that you should watch and some of the different elements. But let's talk about chapter 2. So chapter 2 is, by then you've already been determined as either a baby face or as a heel. So you place your cards accordingly based on the different covers that you have. You have special encounter cards, you have rival cards, scenario 1, 2, and 3 cards. You can place them in separate piles or in a pile depending on your preference, and these encounter cards as well. And I want to dig deep into imagining I'm in the middle of chapter 2 and what might happen to me and how do I progress during the campaign. So in this campaign, I'm already up to, let's say, 28 victory points. I have a back injury. I got some bump tokens that can easily become another injury. I have 3, baby face spaces. I'm on point number 3, and maybe I have 6 kills. What I can do in chapter 2, and let's assume it's a new night. So the chapter 2 is separated into different nights during the campaign. And let's assume I have lost my first match in a tournament. And what the tournament is this is a tournament to win the world title. That's what chapter 2 is all about. And it's a round robin tournament, and I've lost my first match. Before proceeding to my second match, there are 5 things you do on a chapter 2 night. Number 1 is you can take 2 backstage actions, and these are the actions that you see here. And the way this works is you look at Kurt Angle's abilities on his wrestler profile card, and these abilities determine how you can approach a backstage action. So let's assume in this case, because you are a babyface already, you can't attack people backstage because that's not a good thing to do as a babyface. But you can cut a promo, you can recover, or you can train. And each one of those actions corresponds with one of your abilities. So for training, if you wanted to train, you can gain more skills icons, which allows you to permanently upgrade your character. And Kurt Angle's awesome at training. I mean, he's an Olympic gold medalist, for God's sakes. And what you would do is you would grab 3 dice, in this case, because the icon here says drive 3, and that would be one of your backstage actions. You would roll these 3 dice. And if I got a 5 and a 4 and 3, the board tells you that a success is a 4+. So I have 2 successes. And that means I can add 2 skill tokens. And as such, I can spend these 8 skill tokens and gain one of my permanent upgrades. Another thing I can do, because remember I have 2 backstage actions, is I could attempt to get on this promo tracker. Because if I get to space 4 on the promo track, I will gain an additional level 2 ability card. Remember, as right now I only have 1. So this will allow me to add another card, which is quite powerful. So I might choose to do that. Another thing I might choose to do is try to manage my health. And this is where the big decisions happen. Do I upgrade my skills? Do I try to gain one of those cards? Or do I treat my health? So let's assume that I wanted to advance on this space. I would then look at the promo action. And the promo action is linked to charisma, obviously. Here it says 2. That means I get 2 dice. This determines the number of dice you roll. And I would roll 2 dice, and I would get 2 successes, which means I would advance only 1 space, but I would then gain 1 level 2 card of my choice. In this case, I want to be a crowd pleaser. and I'll add that to my abilities. And in addition to that, as you can see, it's written here, I get +1 momentum for each success, meaning in my next match, I start the match with 2 momentum rather than it being on the 0 spot. So that's an awesome thing that I can do. A third thing I can do is I can try to recover. And again, Kurt Angle's resilience is 2. So let's assume that I don't want to upgrade my skills. And remember, you can do only 2 of these, so you got to choose. You roll 2 dice, and here I only get 1 success. If you only get 1 success, you can remove 1 bump token. These are 2 bump tokens, so I replace it with 1. That's not 1. That's 1 bump token. So I was able to at least delay the inevitable injury. Or if in this case I had rolled 2 successes, I could have removed all the bump tokens, or I could have removed an injury. So if you roll 2 successes as a recovery icon, as a recovery action, excuse me, you can always remove an injury. So instead of getting your victory points down, this is another way to remove bump tokens and injuries accordingly. Now, one thing I want to mention is, yes, you get 2 backstage actions, but you can't do the same backstage action twice in the same round. So if I've already upgraded my skills, I can't do this again. The only time where you can repeat a backstage action is if you rolled 0 successes. You can then spend your second backstage action to do so. All right, so the third thing that you do during a campaign, so if you remember, I'm going down these bullet points. Sorry, the second thing. So the first thing we did was we took 2 backstage actions. The second thing we do is we draw an encounter card. So I'm going to draw this encounter card. I don't want to ruin it for you, but basically someone's attacked me backstage and they've done 2 damage, and I start my match with 2 less health. So what does this card mean? I'm going to put it out of reach for spoilers, but what does this card mean? What it means is, right now I have a back injury and 2 bump tokens. So my health is already down to 14 because of the bump token, and down to 13 because of my rib injury. And I'm already starting the match with 3 less stamina. It's not a good place. Now that someone's added insult to injury and attacked me and done 2 additional damage, I start my match with 2 less damage. So I start my match with 11 health, which is not looking good for Kurt Angle. And so that's how these encounter cards work with you. There are different encounter cards. Some will give you bonuses. So for example, on this card, you can gain an additional 1 VP if you beat your finisher, and there are other bullet points that I don't want to ruin. But there are specific cards that have this icon at the top, which is an E. And again, I'm trying not to ruin this for you. But these are events that happen, and they give you a choice. And depending on the choice that you take, it'll tell you to follow a particular action and do something. So based on the choice that you've made, in this case, based on the choice I've made, it tells me to draw a scenario card, and specifically a scenario 2 card. So I draw that, and I read it. There's some flavor text, and then any text in these boxes tells me how I should act. In this case, I've actually drawn a rival. So I've done something where I've pissed someone off so much that he now hates me, and there's animosity between us, and that's created a rival. And it's telling me to draw a card from my wrestler profile card to determine that rival. And in this case, I draw it, and it's Randy Savage. Whatever event happened that I don't want to ruin has ensured that Randy Savage is now my arch nemesis. He's my rival. And I put it in the rival slot right here. And now he's there. And why is he important? Because on future nights, when I draw an encounter card, and by the way, the board says this, if you draw any card that has this symbol at the very top, so this symbol right here, the omega, I think, what that symbol will do is that you ignore this card and you set aside all the encounter cards. So the encounter cards that I've been drawing recently, which are these, you set them all aside and you draw a rival card instead. And that takes you down a rabbit hole where you just follow the instructions on the cards based on the wins and losses that you've delivered and based on the actions and choices that you make, most likely through the special encounter deck. So that's how the flow can develop in the game. The second you have a rival and you draw that Omega kind of card on your next night, and you draw a rival card accordingly, you no longer do two backstage actions. You no longer go through these 5 bullet points. You simply follow the instructions on every single card you've drawn. All right, so let's go back to step 3. Imagine I did create a rival, but remember, I'm still going through the nights because I haven't drawn an Omega card. That's for next night, right? For the next round of the campaign. So I still proceed with the third bullet point, which is to draw my next opponent. And I do this again from this wrestler profile deck. And my next opponent is Ray Jaguar, and I set up Ray Jaguar's Automa deck and accordingly. Let's assume I drew the British Bulldog. I would, set up the British Bulldog as you saw in the previous videos, the Automa cards, the Automa die, and I would have the match, and as I mentioned, I would start with 11 health and lower stamina. And after the match ends, and this is very important, you go to the match, you finish the match, and then after every single match, and this is not just in chapter 2, it's in every chapter, every single match in All Time Wrestling's campaign. No matter how many rivals you have, no matter what is happening, there are a couple of things that you need to do. You need to look at your health at the end of the match. And again, as I described, if you're in low health, you get 1 bump token. If you're at the minimum health, you get 2 bump tokens. And as I mentioned, if those bump tokens could then translate automatically into injuries. The other thing you would do is, based on the result of the match, you'd adjust your victory points. So assuming I won, I would go from 28 to 31 victory points, given that I am playing at medium difficulty, and that's a match. The third thing that's specific to Chapter 2 is you would put a win icon here, because that's a tournament match, and now you have 1 loss and 1 win in that tournament. All right, so what happens, let's assume, whether you have a rival or not, let's assume you have a rival and you never draw this Omega card. You draw other cards and that rivalry never actually materializes. What happens at the end, after you've had 4 matches, because the tournament is made up of a round-robin tournament of 4 matches. Once you're done with the 4 matches, you're going to look at your win-loss ratio. In this case, I've set it up where I've won 3 matches and I've lost my first match. In this case, it clearly says if wins are more than or equal to 3, I draw special encounter 13. And if my wins are less than 2, or less than or equal to 2, so if I had that, I would draw special encounter 16. This is when, again, all these steps on the tournament side end, and I draw the cards that I'm told to draw accordingly. And these cards will take you, again, through different storylines, depending on whether you have a rival or not, and depending on your win-loss ratio. The last thing I want to talk about in the campaign is Chapter 2 is done. You've finished it. You've raised points, etc. There's a campaign. There's a chapter set up for each chapter. The final thing to look at would be the Chapter 3 cards of the campaign. This is our most interesting cards. I don't want to show them to you, but they really function in a similar way to Chapter 1, where you just follow the instructions on every card. And remember one rule that I might not have mentioned out loud, and excuse me for doing so. Any abilities you build up, so these cards that you now have, which are maybe one time used during a match, but they go back into your hand for every single match. So every single match you can use one of these cards once. Or the abilities that I described that are permanent. All these kind of components are move with you from chapter to chapter. So this career progression, even your injuries, your health, everything you see on the campaign board moves to the next chapter accordingly. I did want to highlight one kind of important component for everyone to understand, which is the rope-a-dope ability, which I hadn't gone over. Generally speaking, when someone attacks you, you either gain 1 stamina or 1 card. This ability means that you would gain 1 stamina and 1 card at the same time. There are other rules in the campaign. My recommendation is just to follow the abilities, follow the manual accordingly, which will guide you through certain specific questions. If you have any, please let us know, post it, and we'll be quick to respond to you. Thank you so much.